so many ideas going on in this project, but it's just the start.
Good design is all about creating that moment of bliss.
This is really also the hospitality and the tourism of tomorrow.
This is what we want to show.
We have created something which blends into the environment, and the house itself is basically seamless.
Imagine you were able to just teletransport.
You are on your own island in the center of Amsterdam.
I think you have to go there to believe it.
Well, congratulations to Skidmore, Owings and Merrill for winning the transport category in this year's awards. And we're going to hear about their great project, the Moynihan Train Hall in their hometown of New York. Over to you and welcome.
Hello, great to be here today. My name is Laura Edelman and I'm a partner with Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. And I'm happy to introduce the Moynihan Train Hall project. We worked on this project with the Empire State Development Corporation in collaboration with developers for NATO and related, as well as builders from Skanska, and in collaboration with the railroads, of course, Amtrak, the Long Island Railroad, and others. When it opened on January 1st of 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, it was an amazing new civic space to add to the transit facilities of New York City and really become the central hub for New York's transit, bringing together the railroads as well as our below-grade subways. SOM has been working on this project since the 1990s and continued as an architect through the ups and downs of the project, and then through design and construction, a legacy that has been with us for almost 25 years. There are many, many architects and other professionals around the city that have worked on this great project, and we're very proud to have delivered this civic icon to the city of New York. Next, please. The history of the site stretches all the way back to 1912 with the original Penn Station designed by McKinley and White, a masterwork of civic architecture, a monumental gateway and entrance to New York City. Unfortunately, with sad thinking, this was demolished in the 1960s and we lost this great landmark. Next, please. However, one good thing they can say that's very special in New York, you can demolish one landmark, but it's unusual to find another right across the street. Another McKim, Mead and White masterwork, the James Farley Post Office, completed in 1914, was landmarked after the demolition of Penn Station and survived until the current day. This building, which was mostly a mail sorting facility, a warehouse of sorts, with a major open space, allowed SOM to begin the transformation of this project into the Moynihan Train Hall. Next, please. The Farley Post Office was originally sited above the tracks with the existing connections down to the platform to facilitate the movement of mail via the trains. It was these existing connections that allowed the transformation of this historic building into the modern 21st century transit facility that we are proud to have delivered today. Next, please, and over to my co-presenter, John.
Hi, my name is John Sacconi. I have been the senior design architect on the project for this entire iteration from beginning of design through completion. So happy to take you through some of the details. At the heart of the project is the train hall, which, once again sort of restores the dignity and grandeur of a gateway into the city with a sort of human touch, being able to enter the city bathed in daylight. So we were able to accomplish this space through a very literal preservation and adaptation and adaptive reuse. So you see here elements of historic structure in these three long span trusses, which were preserved from the original building and then added to with contemporary barrel vaulted skylights that do not copy but evoke the sense of grandeur of the original Penn Station that was lost. So a little view behind the scenes of how this was accomplished. So this is an image of the original mail sorting room from the postal facility as it was originally constructed. It was a single-story space with long span trusses and an ornate ceiling work with a sort of double truss system that allowed the management of the Postal Service to look down through the openings and observe the goings-on inside the space. And so all of this was covered over and lost during World War II, unfortunately. However, the structure survived and was able to be reclaimed and reused and sort of transformed into this very contemporary skylights, 4 of which are in the space, 50 feet by 200 feet, in a scale of space that's comparable to Grand Central Terminal in New York. And really this room, as Laura alluded to, becomes one of the sort of great urban rooms in the city of New York, along with these 4 skylights. And so we took this idea of the monumental civic room and took that kind of through the entire building as a way to organize your circulation. And so at each of these entries, we've created these grand urban rooms that, like the skylight, have art pieces integrated that draw your gaze up and your curiosity up. For example, here in the 33rd Street entry, this incredible piece by Kehinde Wiley reinterprets the Sistine Chapel with native New Yorkers, and is positioned in a way to draw your interest from the exterior. In this image, you can see how we have restored the entire building facades and then complemented it with canopies and other sort of contemporary elements in a way that complements but does not distract from the original architecture. Here you see the detailing of the modern versus the historic, and so you're always able to read the building and understand from which era every piece of the building was designed. Here on the 31st Street entry, a piece by Elmsgreen and Dragset in the ceiling, a sort of ode to the urban metropolis that they called the Hive. And so this sort of animates these entries into the building and provides interest. At the center of the building, at the mid-block skylight, retail is organized into a mixed-use facility. And actually the entire building is leased in this climate. So that's sort of a testament to the unique nature of office spaces that you can create from from some of these found buildings in cities. It's a very unique offering and was completely leased as soon as it came up for availability. And in this climate, that's really saying something. And the architecture of the entire transit facility was very raw, in a way of homage to the building's past. But at certain moments, like these waiting rooms, we have a sort of elevated sense of finish. So nicely curved wood benches as a contrast to the sort of rawness of exposing the historic structure. And here you see that philosophy carried through with a sort of standing waiting area for the commuter rail. And so again, all these pieces kind of come together to create a great new civic icon and a proper front door for the city of New York. Back to Laura.
Yeah, it's amazing what creating this new train hall has been able to do. With over 22 million square feet of new space coming up between the Manhattan West project and Hudson Yards developments, as well as the extension of the 7 train and upcoming future East Side Access projects, Moynihan Train Hall is well positioned to be the epicenter of the next century of life in New York City. It connects the Amtrak and New Jersey Transit, people coming in from New Jersey, the Long Island Railroad access, and all of the different transit moving up and down the north to south, as well as now east-west in the city. So it's a great new space, bringing together the grandeur of travel on rail with the use of commercial opportunities as well as some new office space to connect these parts of the city. So to the next. We're very happy to take some questions, and before that, John will play a short drone video.
If it'll come up. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that presentation. And it's not often one can see an example of a sort of compensation for an urban injustice from nearly 60 years ago. Let's kick off with Christina. Perhaps you'd like to start.
I'm still trying to get my head around the project and to make sure that I understand it correctly. Is this across Penn Station? Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. It's the original Penn Station, if I draw on the screen, was on this site, but the tracks actually extended underneath the postal building, which was right across 8th Avenue. And so those existing connections between the platforms and the tracks and the old post office allowed for the transformation of that postal space into a new entrance for the rail to get down to the platforms.
So is this still the post office, and your project is an entrance to the train station, or the whole building is your project? I'm trying to understand what the scale of the project, and because you talk about the scale and the size and the impact on New York, and yet the interior views are quite intimate. The things that you showed are quite intimate, and I'm just trying to really understand what the project is and what happens to the building above it, and what happens. I understand the hall with the 4 skylights, the entrance sequence, but I don't understand the rest of the project. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, so sure. So the post office, all of the postal service for New York City and the entire Northeast used to arrive via mail. The entire Northeastern United States used to arrive via mail into this building, but a new postal sorting facility was built out by the airport in the 70s. And so after that time, the building was mostly vacant for the last 20 to 30 years, except for a very small sort of local post office that takes the top of the facade here onto 8th Avenue. So the rest of the building was transformed into circulation space and retail and transit space. Amtrak's headquarters moved out of Penn Station into Moynihan Train Hall, freeing up space inside the original Penn that can then be demolished and the pedestrian experience there bettered. And then the upper levels of this building, approximately 1.5 million square feet of space, were turned into office space. And so that office space, as I alluded to, has been leased. And so but the project isn't.
That was part of this renovation, or that was already there? This is part of this renovation.
That office space. Yes, there is work still being done in the building to allow for all those pieces upcoming.
Yeah, and the work was done in phases, and SOM has done all of that while the main Moynihan Train Hall was under construction. We previously opened the West End Concourse, which John was also the designer and I led, to enable some initial connections for the subway and some of the rail access. And ultimately, the train hall then opened, and we also have a team that is developing the rest of the building in order to facilitate the full use of all of the commercial space, office space, and the rest of the retail.
Thank you.
So the whole building, including the historic renovation of the lobby of the post office.
Thank you.
The other very beautiful building. I'm curious when we are going to see it in the movies, no? So because there's always these shots of iconic on the main grand hall of New York. What fascinates me now at this moment is the way, because I'm trying to understand also how it's made, is the cupolas. They look quite thin structure actually, and they still, you actually see it almost like I don't know how to explain it, but it looks like a good, excellent piece of engineering to get it working with such a light structure.
Yeah, maybe go back to one of the other images, John.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do here. Hold on one second. Share. And I suppose I can talk a little bit more about the about this, how the structure works. So maybe I should go first to this drawing. In this drawing, you can see that there were 3 original long span trusses with a lot of other supporting structure that was much lighter gauge and, honestly less interesting to preserve, because these are sort of massive, like historic bridge type construction, from sort of turn of the 20th century, all riveted, all bolted together. And so our skylight is grid shell construction. So there's steel members that form a catenary arch at the center. And so that catenary arch by its own shape is self-supporting. And you see the members actually in and of themselves getting thicker and thinner in response to the structural forces on them. And so, the grid shell structure works in tandem with a series of cables that work in plane with the vaulted structures. And then very, very thin, you see a series of sort of these web cable type things in 2 spots that stabilize it in this direction. But there was also some interventions into the existing trusses. But yes, the very, very contemporary set of engineering and construction, and that was part of the intent, that these skylights be contemporary and be reflective of their time.
Thank you very much. Abdelkader.
Very much for this huge building and structure, but just you were talking about the contemporary engineering solution you found, but from the aesthetic point of view, it looks like the most classical contemporary building, because the last image you show us looks like a Masaccio painting from the Renaissance in Florence. It's exactly designed like this. The same perspective and the same way to design the roof. Did you had in mind to this dialogue with the past to make it that close to? We feel that you are. I'm going to use a word. Sorry, because my English is not perfect, but I think I have the feeling that you are copying the past in a way to continue this past. Why did you decide to do it this way? You could also find another solution, more in opposition or more contrasting.
Are you speaking to the skylight in general? Which part of the building are you referring to?
Yeah, this one, this exact image.
From the inside of the train hall, looking at the skylights.
Yes, it's from the inside. Yeah.
Well, I think part of this was the part of the form finding was finding the most structurally efficient solution, and that's kind of what I talked about before. Like the span of this arch actually allows the skylight to support itself on top of the arches. So it's a classical form, but it's also uses the least amount of steel humanly possible to be able to span that distance. And so part of it is this ethos of efficiency and in contemporary architecture, but also we found the form to be timeless, and if that's something that resonates with historic architecture, we think it will resonate far into the future also. So I think I see it a little differently.
Well,
Thank
as
you.
an historian,
And a quick sorry, a quick question. No, sorry, we're nearly out of time, but Kim, I wanted to let you ask a question.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a contemporary, elegant glass solution you came up with. I have just a question about the facade. The old facade is very sort of temple-like, as it always was in the old days for these kind of buildings. So you didn't do very much about the facade. You just kept it more or less as it was, or what?
Yes, and that was the building had to be a historic preservation project for many reasons. It had to the structure of the financing. The building had to qualify as a historic preservation from the exterior. So that placed a lot of restrictions on what we would be able to modify with the exterior. So we took a very preservationist approach to the exterior. Putting in new entries in places like I think this image is sort of the extent of our intervention on the exterior with these canopies that were inserted. And the pieces that we did insert, we tried to have them be reflective of their time as well. So in very, very thin structure, integrated lighting, an almost weightlessness to them. That suggests a sort of a very, very contemporary attitude towards them, while not distracting from the building qualifying as a historic preservation project. And the rest of the exterior was painstakingly restored to its original condition.
Thank you very much for that. And I must say, one of the more miserable experiences on transport systems in the world looks as though it's going to be actually rather a marvel. I look forward to being able to visit NYC again. Thank you so much for your presentation. Congratulations on your award, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.